What's up, you guys, and welcome to Read the Room. My name is Chase the Dark Sage, and today I'm your host for another video on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And oh my gosh, you guys know that we recently finished part 7, which I think is arguably, well, not even arguably, I just think it's undeniably the best JoJo part that I have read so far. I've only read up to part 7. Now, does that mean I've read every single JoJo part up until then? No. Currently, I'm only finished with part 3, and I gotta read 4, 5, and 6. But I have watched the animated versions of all the JoJo's that has come out so far, and it's only up to 6 parts, so in today's video, we'll be ranking the JoJo parts up into what I've read and or watched, and we're ranking parts 1 through 7. I hate when I have to rank JoJo stuff because I just love all of JoJo, man. I love all of JoJo, so to have to pit parts against each other, I just don't like it. But I want you guys to know that I appreciate what Araki has created with JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, because I find an appreciation with each part, except for part 5. I like part 5, but it's not my favorite. Like, it's always between part 1 and 5 where I'm just like, should they go in the same tier or not? But we'll save the ranking and the commentary when we actually get to the tier list. But before we actually get into that, make sure you like the video and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, to help support your boy within the YouTube algorithm. And this is our first ranking video on Read the Room. This is crazy. This is crazy. Expect more ranking videos on this channel right here. And if you want me to rank other series or other MCs and things like that, let me know down in the comment section down below. But yeah, it's finally come to this point. And yes, we'll be doing another ranking video once we finish part 8. But we got to do one for part 7 right now, so you guys know kind of where I stand at when it comes to each of these parts. So without further ado, let's get to ranking these JoJo Bizarre Adventure parts. All right, guys, so now that we're on the tier list, we have tiers S, A, B, C, and D, and with D being the worst and S, well, obviously being the best. So we're gonna go in order from each part, and I'm gonna give you guys, I guess, my quick thoughts on each part itself. Now, like I said, no hate to any person that loves a certain part. Like, if you love part 1, you know what I'm saying, I'm not going to judge you for that. If you love part 5, if you love part 4, no judgment. Let me know your ranking down in the comment section down below. I'd love to see what you guys think about this ranking. I want to know if I have any controversial takes, or if you guys have any controversial takes. This should be fun, and depending on my choices, this can't be violent. So let's go ahead and start off with part 1. Now, part one isn't the best part, obviously. And I know a lot of people say, oh, part 1 is boring. Part 1 is just a snooze fest. I dropped the anime in part 1. Part 1 is not great, but part 1 definitely did give me the vibe of what JoJo's was and what I was getting into with JoJo's. Obviously, until we got to part 3. Part 3 was one of my favorite parts of all time. But right here, I gotta remember, this is what I think is best and not my favorite. Because if I think what's best and not my favorite, this is gonna be a different list. But right here, this is why I'm thinking is the best, and I'm giving it a letter grade itself. And I have to put part 1 at a D. Now, starting off as a parody and heavily inspired by Fist of the North Star, part 1 is not necessarily bad. I'm ranking this all amongst other JoJo parts. I'm not ranking this in terms of how it is as an anime as a whole. I'm just ranking this each upon each part. You get what I'm saying? So part 1 has to go in D, and part 1 ain't bad. Like I said, we do have a bland villain with DO1 to take over the world, and we have a bland hero where he just wants to be good for the sake of being good. He wants to be a gentleman. Now, this is the gentleman arc right here, Phantom Blood. And like I said, I have no problem with this, especially with the time period it came out in the 80s. We got to remember that this came out in the 80s, and the anime adaptation for part 1 definitely elevates the actual source material itself. I've read part 1 and I've watched part 1. I will say that I read part 1 within a few hours and watched part 1 obviously within a few hours itself, because I believe it's like 8-9 episodes. So it's not bad, but it's definitely the lowest of the list right here. And that's not bad, because JoJo's Bizarre Adventure to me is it's a high tier manga. So being D in a high tier manga ain't too bad. But now we have to actually rank part 2. And part 2 is one of my favorite parts because it has my favorite JoJo in it. If you don't know my favorite JoJo, or at least maybe used to be my favorite JoJo, I don't know, man, part 7 is still, still hot at part 7. It is Joseph Joestar. Now, I love him as a main JoJo, but I also love him in the mentor role that he played in part 3 itself. And I will say that Battle Tendency definitely gave me a better vibe of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, because the main character, Jonathan's grandson, was completely different to what Jonathan actually was and what he stood for. Is Joseph a good guy still? Yes, but is he the greatest guy? Is he a gentleman like Jonathan? No, not at all. And I do love the Joe Bro of Caesar. I do love the story. The villain, I feel, is the weakest part of this whole part right here. We have the Hamon thing, and this is basically where Hamon kind of stops. I mean, we get to see it in part 3, but we don't really get to utilize it like we do in part 1 and part 2. And Cars is like the weakest part of this whole arc right here, and he might be the weakest villain on here. Well, not weak as in terms of strength, but weak as in like terrible. Like he might be the weakest villain aside from Diavolo. I have a big problem with Diavolo, but like I said, we'll get to that part later on. But if I had to rank part 2 just based off the part itself and everything it includes, and it's part of the Pillar Men or the Vampire Stone Mask trilogy or whatever, I'm gonna have to put part 2 in B. Do I want to put it in A though? Do I want to put it in A? Do I want to put it in A? I have to put part 2 in A right now. Obviously, I can reorder things after we get done judging everything, but right now, part 2 goes in the A rank. All right, so right now we have one of my favorite parts. In fact, my top 2 favorite parts, and it's not one because now Still Bar Run has that. We have part 3, Stardust Crusaders. I mean, I have a whole Jotaro statue right here and a Stardust Crusaders poster right above it. I love Stardust Crusaders. I just feel like Araki just does so much with Stardust Crusaders, and I gotta take as much bias out as I can. I love part 3 because of the introduction of stands, the actual introduction of a whole crew, a whole team. I love the introduction of the JoJo character, not necessarily being the main character, but the fact that it's just shared a spotlight with 4 other characters, mainly with Polnareff, because Polnareff is the GOAT. But in this part, Jotaro is the one JoJo that kind of says the least out of the first 3 JoJos that we got. And with Joseph making a return as the mentor character, traveling along with his grandson to go and fight Dio, the man that took his grandfather's body. Oh my gosh, I love it. But I will admit the fact that my boy Matt put this into my head, and I hate Matt for doing this, but he is correct. Dio is a great villain in terms of personality. To me, he's like Cell. Cell is just, he has that presence about him. He has that great, just, that evil presence about him. But as a villain, in terms of making moves throughout the series itself, Dio isn't that great of a villain compared to someone like Funny Valentine or someone like Yoshikage Kira or Pucci. I will say that I love Dio, especially personality wise, and he's one of my favorite antagonists of all time. But because of the lacking presence of the villain, and yes, I know Dio has, his presence of a villain of, persuading all these stand users to go against the Joestars, but let's be real, he just sends a lackey. Each part of part 3 is stand battle of the week. And I know some people get tired of it. I know a lot of people drop off in part 3, even though it's the most popular part. Like I said, it introduces stands, but he uses that trope of, oh, we have a new enemy this week, let's go ahead and fight the new enemy. And I know the constraints and complaints that Araki has when he was actually coming out with part 3, feeling like each chapter should be having some type of action instead of him really wanting to develop the story, which is why I say part 7 is one of the best parts, because he gets to tell the story he really wants to tell with no constraints. But in part 3, you could tell that he really had something cooking, and with the invention of stands itself, it's such a great, phenomenal battle system itself, but he's really held back with having to do that week to week thing of, oh, we have to have a stand battle in here and it's just a random stand user. But I will admit though, the fact that this series and this part right here doesn't involve any type of tournament, and they shown in Jump manga, not a single tournament. This is crazy, and I love it for that fact of it being so different, especially at the time period that it came out in. And I love Jotaro, even though he says the least, and he's obviously based off of Clint Eastwood. We got Kakyoin, who I felt like could have done more if his eyes weren't slashed up and we left out for like 30 chapters, which I kind of hated that as well. And Avdol, as much of a used character as I wish he would, I will have to put part 3, and I love part 3 because it's an adventure with the boys. Literally what people love about One Piece and seeing those characters interact with each other, that's what I love about part 3. Bros being bros, but then when stuff goes down, they gotta handle that ish. So, obviously, the last battle, oh my gosh. That battle against Jotaro and Dio, oh my gosh. I shouldn't have to say anything about that, but I will have to put part 3 in the B tier. I love part 3, but I know a lot of people that dipped off in part 3, so I'm not gonna act like I'm oblivious to those things right here. But now, oh my gosh, we got a good part to judge, and we have part 4, Diamond is Unbreakable. Now, I love the anime for Diamond is Unbreakable. At the time of recording this video, I have not read Diamond is Unbreakable, but I know this is where the art style change goes from them being big buff men to kind of a bit more skinny in terms of like how they look in character design. And Josuke is a main JoJo protagonist. I like him. He's very charming, and he's just a likable dude overall. He's probably the most relatable JoJo, where his personality isn't over the top until you get to talking about his hair. And he has a pompadour. Any character with a pompadour in anime, like Kuwabara, they're probably going to be goated at some point. So Joseph, I love the crew in this one with Koichi and Okuyasu. I love the villain with Yoshikage Kira. Oh my gosh, some of the stand battles and the uniqueness of Mario being, you know, such a contained story within one city, this murder mystery happening, and this whole thing that's happening in the city of the legend or whatever, and just how some characters use their stand abilities in everyday life. Oh my gosh. It's such a huge stark difference compared to part 3 itself, where we're actually traveling to Egypt and we just have everything stopping us. But in this part, we literally go eat spaghetti and they think that they're about to fight a stand user. And you literally get to see all the protagonists meet each other at this one time. At least with Jotaro and Joseph, obviously they're bound by family. Kakyoin and Jotaro, I believe, go to the same school, Polnareff. Yeah, we get to meet them all, but most of the characters that we have in part 3, they kind of start off together, and then we just add 2 more characters, well, 3 more characters, including Iggy, to the brink of things. In part 4, we literally get to meet everybody, and we soon form the Mario Warriors, and also, we get introduced to Rohan. This man ate a bug. Come on, dog. We're putting part 4. Come on, let's go ahead and put that in A. I have no qualms with putting that in A tier right here. But now we have to move to part 5. And I like part 5. I have no problem with part 5. Part 5 has the best and goated outro in all of anime, not just JoJo's, in all of anime with Jodeci freaking you. I don't know what Araki was cooking, putting that as the outro. Oh, but he was chefing it up in the kitchen. Let me tell you that right now. So with part 5, I did not like the villain. I wasn't too attached to the characters like I was in part 3 or part 4. But them fights, man. Oh my gosh, those fights in part 5. When I have to describe part 5 in one sentence, I just say it's a cracked version of part 3. It's just part 3 literally on crack, on the highest drug that you could put, because every single battle is a near-death experience. These characters are basically on the brink of death. They are fighting for their lives, and some of the best battles in JoJo happen in part 5. For example, Risotto versus Doppio. Oh my gosh, that fight was amazing. Or the 10-page Muda. There are so many great fights within part 5, and I like some of the characters in part 5, but I'm not too attached to some of the characters. Like Fugo. Fugo is a fan favorite, and I don't know why. Fugo literally leaves the gang. He's basically the 6ix9ine / Gunna of the gang. He sees when the gang is in trouble and we gotta do what we gotta do. He's like, nah, bro, I don't want no parts of that. Come on, dog. No one in part 3 or 4 was like that. No one in part 2 was like that. No one in part 1 was like that. That boy Speedwagon was going on a journey with Jonathan. This boy Fugo didn't want to defy Diavolo. Now, case in point, half the crew did die. Over half the crew did die. But still, you ride out for the gang. How is Fugo people's favorite when, I'm not gonna lie, his stand ability is insane and pretty fire, but he didn't ride out with the gang? And Bucciarati obviously is the best character in part 5. To me, Giorno is probably the weakest JoJo out of all these JoJos. Now, I get it. Some people think that he has some deep philosophical meaning. To me, he doesn't. Yeah, he's Dio / Jonathan Sonny. He has both characteristics for both, but I thought it was And to me, literally what part 5 is that's what everybody thinks JoJo is. Where all the memes come from for JoJo, most of them come from part 5, and people literally use part 5 as a punching bag for JoJo. Like all the sus moments that happen in part 5, or all the near-death experience, or, you know, it's just the meme part where what people think about JoJo's, I think it literally just comes from part 5. Now, is part 5 a bad part? No, I think part 5 is very fun and very enjoyable, and the ride that we actually go through, and with Golden Experience Requiem, oh, that's crazy. But with Diavolo not being that present of a villain, and him just being, oh my gosh, to me, he might be the weakest villain. Yeah, he might, you know, he is the weakest villain on this whole list right here. Oh, I have to put part 5 in the C tier. I don't think part 5 is bad. It's a smidge better than part 1. Well, it's a lot better than part 1, but I will say that compared to part 3, where, oh my gosh, I just loved everything about part 3, and I do have my qualms about it. I love everything about part 3, and part 5 is an elevated version to me of part 3, but to me, it just doesn't have those moments that I really love compared to part 3. I just love the gang more in part 3 than I do in part 5, which gives it that little bit more of an edge. And also, Giorno literally defeats the mob boss within a week. That's insane. And now we have part 6, and part 6 is a part that, you know, is kind of a bit more fresh in my mind because I actually finished it recently within the year. Part 6, I love part 6. I like part 6 more than part 4. I really love the crew. I love the antagonist. Oh, Poochie is so goated. Poochie is second best villain on this JoJo tier list right here. Dio is third to me, or Yoshikage might be third to me. We gotta do a JoJo's ranking of the villains as well. But Poochie is just such a goated villain. I just love the fact of Made in Heaven. I love White Snake. I love the fact that we actually cripple Jotaro at the beginning of this part. Jolene's whole goal is to save Jotaro, but now we gotta stop Poochie, this man that has been tainted by Dio on this absolute justice or this absolute heaven to find salvation. And I like the story in part 6. I like the characters in part 6. Oh, that weather report backstory. Emporio. Oh, my name is Emporio. Oh, when he got the disc. Oh, Jolene not being the savior of part 6, but basically kind of being the savior because she helped Emporio do what he had to do to defeat Poochie. Oh, when the whole universe just got effed over. I don't know what to say. The stand battles in this one is intense, and Araki made a cast full of women. If we could count Foo Fighters as a woman, do we count Foo Fighters as a he, she, or they? I don't know what to count Foo Fighters as, but we have a cast full of women in a prison in the super contained part of the story itself. And oh my gosh, the stakes, some of the stand battles, the creativity that it goes with. Now, I will say that I did watch the anime and I did not read the manga for part 6, for part 5, and for part 4. But I will say that animation does take a dip in quality. It's not the worst dip that I've ever seen, but I do have to kind of factor that in when it comes to my enjoyment of it. It didn't really detract from my enjoyment, but you could kind of notice it, and it kind of, you're like, oh, okay, that happened. But still, I enjoyed part 6 for what it was. I do like Jolene as a character as well. Even the opening scene with her just masturbating and getting caught by one of the guards. I love Jolene, man. Jolene is probably obviously top 5 because there's not many Jo stars that are the main JoJo. Top 3. I give Jolene like top 3 for me. So I had to put part 6. I had to put part 6 in the A ranking. And now we move to part 7 because obviously I have not digested JoJolion yet. But now we have part 7, Steel Ball Run. This was the first read through that we had on this channel. It won't be the last, but oh my gosh, we have had some moments / memories made with part 7. I shouldn't have to say anything about part 7. Literally, Gyro, or Gyro for the people that are new to the channel, because I like to say Gyro because it just rolls off the tongue better. Gyro is the best Joe bro. Johnny is the best JoJo. Oh my gosh. The characterization, the character development, the backstories, the moments that they go through, times where they're just bonding. Like when Gyro's like, hey Johnny, go tell him to eat ish. No, you go do it. Eat ish, fall off your horse. Those moments, or pizza mozzarella. We got moments like that. We had the moments with Ball Breaker, Tusk Act 4, fighting Valentine literally shooting Gyro to make sure he's dead, and coming after Johnny and saying, you're next, Johnny Joestar. Oh my god. And then we had the napkin speech. Literally, Valentine is the best villain in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure that I've read up to so far. I don't know what to say about this. And then the surprise ending with Diego, and then Lucy Steele coming to save the day. Oh my gosh, the infinite rotation, Ball Breaker transcending through dimensions, Gyro dying. I don't know how else to describe part 7. Steel Ball Run is Araki's magnum opus. Oh my gosh, part 7 is amazing. And the community that I've made with you guys while reading part 7, you guys helping me, you guys being so involved to make sure that I'm good when it comes to reading this part. Oh my gosh, part 7 is amazing. So I have to give part 7 a S ranking. This kind of came at no surprise. You guys know how much I love part 7 after the read through itself. Now let's go ahead and list off what I have in the rankings. In D tier, we have part 1. Not a bad part, but not the greatest part at all. It's not even closer to the greatest part. In C rank, we have part 5. Not a bad part as well, but to me, it's just a more souped up, cracked out version than part 3. In B rank, we have part 3. One of my favorite parts, my second favorite part, right after Steel Ball Run. And in A rank, we have 3 parts in A rank. I love Stone Ocean, Battle Tendency, and Diamond is Unbreakable for all types of different reasons. I feel like Araki was in his bag when it came to those 3 arcs. But honestly, when it comes to the S rank, part 7, that was a different beast. That's all I'm gonna say. I cannot wait to see where we rank JoJolion when we get done reading JoJolion, but I've heard good things. I haven't really heard any bad things. I also haven't heard the most hype things about JoJolion. Like I said, it kind of recently finished, so people are still trying to simmer on it, but I really want to see where part 8 ranks among all the JoJo parts itself. And that's about it for the video, guys. Let me know what you guys think about this ranking down in the comment section down below. Like I said before, give me your ranking of all these JoJo parts, including JoJolion, with no spoilers about JoJolion, down in the comment section down below. Let me know what y'all think, man. Let me know if I was bugging on this list or if I was spitting on this list. Let me know if I was chefing it up like a Rocky does as well. And as usual, don't forget to like the video and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And don't forget to check out the Patreon. Lowest tiers of $1. You get to see these videos weeks ahead before everybody else does on the YouTube channel as well. And as usual, check out this playlist right here. I have no idea what this is, but check out this latest video right here. I also don't know what that is. But I'll say thank you guys for watching. Dark Sage out. Peace.